She tossed my mother's ring into the kitchen trash can like it was a gum wrapper. No yelling. No dramatics. Just a calm flick of the wrist as she said, "You'll want to take your junk before you go." My name is Ryan, and that moment, seeing the delicate vintage opal ring my mom left me when she passed, half buried under a greasy napkin and banana peel, ripped something in me wide open. It wasn't just about the ring. It was about everything that had led up to it. Every compromise. Every silence I swallowed. Every part of myself I'd given up trying to be enough for her. Her name is Dana. We were married for 5 years. I met her in college back when I was this scrappy film student bartending at night to keep the lights on. She was pre-law, sharp as a blade, always in control. I was drawn to her fire. She said she liked how unpolished I was, how I made her laugh when everything in her world was serious. But I think what she actually liked was the idea of me. Someone malleable. Someone who would orbit around her world, not ask for much. I didn't notice the slow erosion of self at first. You don't when you're in love and in it for real. When I told her I wanted to try directing full-time after graduation, even if it meant freelancing or struggling a while, she smiled tightly and said, "That's cute, babe. But one of us has to be practical." She didn't say no outright, just started calling my projects hobbies, and referred to me as between jobs at parties, even when I was working gigs. I brushed it off. I kept brushing everything off. Her jabs. The way she'd flinch when I'd talk passionately about a script I was working on. The sighs when I'd come home with camera gear or storyboards. I figured if I could just make something stick, she'd see. She'd believe in me again. Or maybe believe in me for once. But the thing about not being seen by the person you love most? It slowly eats at you. Quietly. Like rust under paint. You don't realize how much of yourself you've lost until one day you're looking at a version of your life you don't recognize, and you're barely in it. The worst part? I started believing her. That I was delusional. That my dreams were too much. That I was lucky someone like her had put up with me. I got so used to shrinking that when she finally said she wanted a divorce, I didn't fight it. I just nodded and said, "Okay." She told me she needed someone more aligned with her future. Whatever that meant. I had just finished working on a short documentary that got decent traction online. I thought she might be proud. But instead she told me, "If internet clout is what makes you happy, go for it. I just need something real." That last week before I moved out, I went back to pack the rest of my stuff. That's when I saw the ring. My mother's opal. She'd worn it on her right hand every day until cancer took her. Dana had asked to wear it once, said it made her feel connected to me, to the sentimental parts of me she claimed to love. I assumed she'd left it on the dresser or in a box somewhere. But no, she put it in the trash. Not angrily. Not even as a big statement. Just like it meant nothing. "Really?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me like I was being dramatic. "You're the one who said we're done. I figured you didn't want keepsakes." I didn't even answer. I just picked the ring out, wiped it clean with the hem of my shirt, and left without another word. That day gutted me more than the divorce papers ever could. Because it showed me, in a single careless moment, that the version of me she had constructed in her head had never been allowed to have grief or legacy, or things that mattered. After that, I didn't want revenge. I wanted rediscovery. I crashed at my friend Eli's place for a few months. Bless him for never making it weird. I took editing jobs during the day and wrote scripts at night. I started therapy, slowly untangling years of gaslighting and self-doubt. Dana's voice still lingered in my head at first, like a judgmental ghost. But it faded little by little, the more I reclaimed space in my own life. I stopped trying to make things that would impress her. I made things that meant something to me. I started a series of mini-documentaries focusing on people rebuilding their lives after loss. Grief, breakups, illness, identity shifts. I poured everything into those stories. No flash, no gimmicks. Just raw, honest storytelling. And something weird happened. People watched them. First a few thousand. Then tens of thousands. Then hundreds. I wasn't making millions or anything, but for the first time, I felt like I had a voice that people actually heard. That meant more than any paycheck ever could. I started getting messages from strangers. This helped me. This reminded me I'm not alone. One woman said my doc helped her reconnect with her estranged dad before he died. That shook me. About a year after Dana and I finalized things, a friend texted me a screenshot. Dana had shared one of my videos on Facebook, of all places, with the caption, "So proud of my ex for making something meaningful." That was rich. 2 days later, I got a text from her. "Dana. Hey. Just watched your grief doc. Didn't expect it to hit me so hard. You really found your voice, huh?" I stared at the screen for a long time. It was the first time she had acknowledged that I had any voice at all. I waited an hour before I replied. Me. Yeah. Took some time. She sent a few more texts over the next week. Casual at first, then slightly more probing. Dana. You ever in the city anymore? I was thinking about that old coffee shop we used to go to. Would be nice to catch up sometime. No pressure. No pressure. Right. Part of me wanted to say yes, to show her the grounded, self-assured version of me she never got to know. The version she never let me be. But a bigger part of me had nothing left to prove. I didn't block her. I didn't insult her. I didn't even ghost her. I just replied. Me. I'm good, Dana. Really. I hope you are too. She hearted the message. That was it. And you know what? That was enough. I still have my mother's ring. I had it cleaned, resized, and I keep it in a small wooden box on my desk. Not because I need to look at it every day, but because it reminds me of the parts of me no one gets to throw away again. Not even me. I didn't hear from Dana for a while after that last text. A part of me expected she might push harder, maybe try to disguise guilt as friendship or nostalgia as something new. But she didn't. She hearted the message and then she vanished. Maybe she felt embarrassed. Maybe she realized I wasn't the same version of me who'd spent 5 years playing emotional contortionist just to make her happy. Either way, her silence felt less like absence and more like air returning to a room that had long been choking me. I kept building. Quietly. Steadily. People think success is this big, showy moment with confetti and champagne and suddenly everyone respects you. That's a lie. Success, at least for me, came like mist creeping in through the cracks, slow, quiet, and undeniable over time. I started getting invited to speak on small panels, then moderate larger ones. A producer I deeply admired sent me a message about collaborating. A nonprofit reached out and asked me to direct a campaign for mental health awareness. I said yes. I didn't change who I was. I didn't buy a Tesla or grow a beard or start drinking black coffee just to appear like a man who made it. I still wore the same old flannel jackets and got nervous before shoots. I still double-checked that my camera batteries were charged like it was the first day of film school. The difference now was, I actually liked the guy doing it all. Around this time I also met someone. Her name's June. And I'll be honest, I didn't think I had it in me to try again. But June didn't ask me to be anything except present. She never made fun of my long monologues about lighting or theme. She watched my documentaries with this quiet attentiveness that felt almost reverent. Once, I caught her tearing up during an edit of a story I was preparing. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. But that moment stayed with me. June and I didn't start as fireworks. We started as embers. Warm, steady, and slow burning. She wasn't flashy. She didn't have Dana's sharp tongue or perfectly curated wardrobe. But she laughed from her gut and she listened like it mattered. She asked about my mom, and when I told her about the ring, she didn't flinch. She gave that to you because she trusted you to carry something of hers forward, she said, holding my hand. That means something. It was the first time someone had spoken about my mom in a way that didn't come from pity or awkward silence. Just respect. A few months later, I got invited to a mid-sized film festival in Oregon. One of my shorts had been selected for screening. I went not expecting much. I figured maybe a polite applause, a few handshakes, a cheap buffet. Instead, after the showing, people stood. Not all, but enough. Some waited after to talk to me. A father told me he watched my piece on parental loss with his teenage daughter and it helped them finally talk about their grief. Another guy handed me a business card and said, "I've got a budget. You've got vision. Let's talk." On the flight home I cried. Quietly. Not because I'd made it, but because for the first time I felt like I had earned the life I was living. Not because I bent to someone else's expectations, but because I rebuilt myself from nothing. That night when I landed, I had a notification. Instagram DM, Dana. Just saw your film tagged by someone I follow. Can't believe how far you've come. That was beautiful. I let the message sit for a full day. Not because I was being strategic. I just didn't know how to respond. The weird thing about being seen by someone after they no longer matter is that it feels less like validation and more like an echo. Meaningless noise arriving far too late. Eventually I replied. Me. Thanks. Nothing more. She didn't deserve more. That wasn't bitterness. That was boundaries. A week later I got an email. From her. It was longer than I expected. Apologetic. Kind of. But wrapped in that same polished language she'd always used when trying to maintain control. She talked about how she'd been wrong. How she hadn't supported me. How she'd let her fear of instability cloud her respect for who I was. She said she missed my spirit. That was the word she used. My spirit. Like I was a ghost she was suddenly haunted by. She ended with, I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you know I see it now. I see you now. I read it twice. Then once more out loud. June was cooking in the kitchen that night. I asked her if she'd mind me reading something to her. She leaned against the counter and listened to the whole thing. When I was done, I looked up and asked, is it weird that part of me feels nothing? She smiled. No, she said. It means you've healed past her reach. We didn't talk about Dana again. I didn't reply to the email. What would I say? That I appreciated her words? Maybe I did. But words are wind, and the house she helped me build collapsed a long time ago. I rebuilt it brick by brick. And in this new house, she doesn't have a key anymore. I've since finished my first full-length documentary. It's not flashy. It's not getting a Netflix deal or going viral. But it's real. It tells the story of 5 people who lost something they thought would destroy them, and how they survived. I interviewed a woman who forgave the man who killed her brother in a DUI crash. A former addict who found redemption working with kids. A man who left his high-powered law career to teach pottery after his wife died. And me. I appear in the last 10 minutes. Not as a narrator but as a subject. Talking about loss. About love. About how sometimes, we don't realize we're drowning until someone shows us we've been holding our breath for years. The film ends on a slow pan of my mother's opal ring, spinning gently on a wooden table under soft light. I showed it to June before the premiere. You think she'd be proud? I asked. June squeezed my hand. She already is. And that was the final answer I needed. The night of the premiere, I stood in the back of the small theater, not to hide, just to breathe. Watching people react to something you created is oddly intimate. More so when what you make carries your wounds in its bones. The audience wasn't loud, but they were locked in. I could feel it, the stillness, the unblinking attention. A few people wiped their eyes when the last interview ended. When the screen went black and the credits rolled, no one clapped right away. There was this weight in the room. And then, soft applause. Steady. Respectful. The kind of applause that says we felt that. Afterward, a man probably in his 60s came up to me. He had tired eyes and a quiet smile. You lost someone? He asked. My mom, I said. He nodded like he understood that kind of pain in a way words couldn't really explain. Mine too, he said. 30 years ago. Some things don't get easier. They just get less loud. I think I'll remember that line for the rest of my life. That night didn't change everything overnight, but it changed something inside me. For years I'd been chasing recognition. Not fame, not wealth, but the feeling of being seen. Not as someone's side project or tolerated dreamer, but as someone whose story had weight. Whose voice mattered. I didn't need Dana to see it anymore. But life's funny with timing. A week after the premiere, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I don't usually answer unknown numbers, but I was in a good mood, so I picked up. Ryan. The voice was uncertain. Almost fragile. It was Dana's mom. We hadn't spoken since before the divorce. She always liked me, more than Dana ever did, I sometimes suspected. She had a gentler soul. Where Dana was steel, her mom was soft linen, the kind that still holds shape but doesn't cut you. I hope it's okay I called, she said. I saw your film. Someone from my grief group shared it. That surprised me. I didn't even know she attended a grief group. It was beautiful, she continued. I didn't know that you were carrying all of that. I'm so sorry, Ryan. Her voice broke slightly. I think we were both standing there with phones to our ears, surrounded by silent kitchens, holding ghosts. We talked for a while. She never brought up Dana directly. But she did say something I'll never forget. You know, Dana always thought love was about achievement. About matching resumes. But what you gave her, what she couldn't see, was the kind of love people spend lifetimes looking for. I didn't know how to respond to that. Not because I disagreed, but because hearing it from her carried a strange kind of closure I hadn't expected. That night, I did get a message from Dana. Like clockwork. Dana. Did my mom call you? I didn't ask her to, I swear. But I'm glad if it helped. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. I just didn't want to open a door that needed to stay shut. But then, 2 days later, another message came. Longer. This time there was no hey or preamble. She just dove in. Dana. I watched the full documentary. Twice. The part about your mom, the ring, your voice breaking at the end, I didn't realize how much of yourself you'd been carrying when we were together. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. I was so scared of failure back then. I thought love meant stability, status, certainty. But you were trying to build something real, and I mocked it. I can't go back and fix it. I know that. But if you ever want to talk, not to get back together, I swear, but just to talk, I'd like that. I sat with that message for an hour. Then I showed it to June. Her response was calm. Honest. No jealousy, no performative coolness. Just simple wisdom. Talk if you want. But you don't owe her that. Sometimes people apologize for them, not for you. That landed hard. Because it was true. I thought about what Dana's apology really was. Not a request to reconnect. Not a plea for redemption. But an unburdening of guilt. And the thing is, my peace doesn't live inside her anymore. It lives in my choices now. In the quiet life I've built. In the woman beside me. In the stories I tell. In the ring that didn't end up in a landfill. I didn't reply to that message either. But I didn't delete it. I let it sit there as a kind of relic. Not because I needed the reminder, but because sometimes we need to see the past sitting quietly in the corner to remember why we closed the door. A month later, June and I went to visit my mom's hometown. I hadn't been back in years. I took her to the lake my mom loved, the one where she used to skip stones and swear they had wishes in them. I scattered some wildflowers there and let the breeze hit my face. I took the ring out of my pocket, not to leave it, just to hold it. June sat beside me in silence, her hand in mine. She would have liked you, I said. She had great taste, June grinned. We laughed. And then we sat. No need for anything more. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives in a shared silence. In a day that isn't heavy. In a message you don't reply to. I didn't need Dana's validation anymore. Because finally, I'd validated myself. It's strange how the past gets quieter when you stop yelling back at it. For the longest time, Dana's voice had been the loudest in my head, even long after she left. Not her literal voice, but her judgment. The way she rolled her eyes when I talked about my projects. The way she sighed when I was editing late. The quiet jabs. That's nice, but when are you going to get a real job? Or, you're too sensitive. It's just a hobby, not a purpose. I carried those words around like bricks in my pocket, and for a while I thought they were true. Now, on most days her voice isn't there anymore. On the rare days it returns, it's just an echo. And I don't answer. A few weeks after the trip to my mom's hometown, I was asked to do a radio interview about my documentary. It wasn't a huge station, just a local program that highlighted artists and creatives. But it meant something to me. It was a small full-circle moment. Back when I was struggling, I used to drive around town delivering food or doing freelance gigs with that same radio station playing in the background. I'd listen to interviews with people who'd made it, wondering if I ever would. And now I was one of them. The host asked good questions, deep ones. About grief, about how storytelling helped me process pain. About what it was like to create something so personal and then release it into the world. At one point, they asked what advice I'd give to someone who feels dismissed or unseen. I paused for a second, then said, "Don't wait for people to believe in you before you start. Especially the people who should but don't. Start anyway. Build anyway. You're not crazy for wanting more. You're just early." That quote got shared more than anything I'd ever said. Someone made it into a graphic. A teacher emailed me to say she put it up in her classroom. That line, "You're just early," I think it hit people because it was something I wish someone had told me back then. Later that night, I got one last message from Dana. Just a sentence this time. "I wish I'd believed in you when it counted." I read it, let it sink in, then locked my phone and set it down. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to fix anything for her. Her regret wasn't mine to soothe. That was the last time she reached out. There's a kind of peace that comes not from things being resolved, but from finally understanding that some things never will be, and that's okay. Now, I live in a quieter part of the city. My days are simpler. I work on my next project, a longer series about unsung caretakers, the people who support others without recognition. June helps when she can. Sometimes she sits next to me while I edit, reading a book or tracing circles on my arm. We don't talk about my past unless it's relevant, and even then there's no bitterness in the air. Just clarity. We're not married. Not yet. But I carry the ring with me still. My mom's opal. It's not a wedding ring anymore. It's not a symbol of what was or what could have been. It's just a piece of her that stayed with me when everything else felt lost. A reminder of where I come from, and that the things worth keeping aren't the ones people try to throw away. Sometimes people ask if I ever wonder what would have happened if Dana and I had stayed together. If she'd supported me, if we'd made it work. Here's the truth, I don't. Because if she hadn't broken me down, I might never have rebuilt myself with this much care. I might have stayed in the shallow version of my life, never realizing how deep it could go. She didn't give me the life I wanted, But losing her gave me the space to create it. There's no bitterness in me anymore. Only distance. And peace. People often assume closure is a door slamming shut, or an epic monologue or revenge wrapped in success. But mine looked different. It looked like a dinner at home, editing a story that matters. It looked like watching June laugh at a dumb joke I made. It looked like waking up one morning and realizing, without ceremony, that I don't miss her. I don't want her back. I don't even think of her first when someone says ex-wife. She's just someone I used to know. Someone who couldn't see the whole of me until it was no longer hers to see. And now, I don't need anyone to hand me my worth. I already know where it lives. It lives in the work. It lives in the people I love who love me back. It lives in the quiet. And it lives in the ring she threw away that I picked back up and carried forward. Not for her. Not even for my mom. But for me.